Welcome back to my StarMade pre-release coverage, Episode 4. I'm Enigmius. Today we're building a brand new ship. You can see dead ahead we've got a space station. That's the long cylindrical thing with the rings around it. Then off to the right, we've got the Hungry Armadillo, our purpose-built salvage mining vessel that I've unofficially renamed the Space Sperm because it's just, it didn't work out exactly as I'd planned. Now, I've just placed the ship core for the new vessel. For those not familiar, I mentioned in a previous episode, but that's basically the nerve center of your ship. If that block gets destroyed, the pilot is killed, and the ship is more or less adrift, waiting to be salvaged. So we want to protect that, because the ship that we're making is a purpose-built combat vessel. Now, I'm playing in single player, which means my only adversaries will be NPC pirates. All I know is the few times I've encountered them, they did awful things to my ship. That's how I know that when your ship core gets destroyed, you are dead. So we're taking some precautions. First of all, we want to protect that ship core. Now, in a perfect world, I would bury that ship core somewhere inside the hull, surrounded by reinforced hull blocks on every side, so that if you wanted to destroy my ship, you would have to first of all get through my shields, then the reinforced blocks, then the ship core, before I kill you, and that's how I would keep the ship from getting destroyed. Unfortunately, if you surround the ship core with blocks, when you're in the ship core trying to fly the ship, you can't see because it's surrounded with blocks. So a workaround for that would be to use a cockpit. And my experience with the cockpit blocks hasn't been all that great so far. They seem to be a little bit buggy. I don't think you can navigate the ship from within a cockpit block. I know you can fire weapons. You can link weapons to a cockpit and fire them. But I know that the whole cockpit block thing is kind of buggy and prone to causing crashes and graphical glitches and things of that nature. So in this case, given that this is just a goof around ship for the pre-release kind of coverage, we're leaving it exposed to some extent. You can see it's still exposed there, but we're going to have some glass blocks in front of it. I think that will allow us it will preserve the visibility that we need, but also putting something between the ship core and open space. Everything else around it will be surrounded by blocks to some extent, and then we'll also have the ship shields. So between all of those measures, hopefully that will keep the ship core safe long enough for our weapon systems to take care of any bad guys who would otherwise kill us. Now, the weapon systems themselves are going to be threefold. First of all, we're going to have a couple of very large manual fire antimatter cannons on the ship, large relative to the size of the ship itself. I'm sure people doing builds with like 2 million blocks, recreations of famous sci-fi spaceships, whatever, would be able to make much larger cannons and do much more damage, but all I can work with is what I've got. So relative to the size of the ship, these laser cannons will be very large. In addition to those, we will have between 12 and 16 turrets on the ship, which are AI controlled. As far as I know, you just have to select a hostile target and the turrets will automatically try and fire on it, which is kind of neat. And there will be 6 to 8 on the upper portion of the ship and 6 to 8 on the underside. So no matter how your ship is rolled, you should be able to get 6 to 8 turrets on a target at any given time. And then lastly, we'll have some missiles, some missile launchers. I don't know where we're going to put them or how much of a focus on them there will be, but missiles. So all kinds of lasers and missiles. Now, the reason behind the turrets is not so much to reduce the skill component required as to make it a little bit more reasonable, because if you're a fan of space games like this, when you're trying to manage multiple targets, it's very easy to lose a critical second or two when you're trying to get a firing solution for one of your targets, and before you know it, the rest of them are on your butt blowing you up. It's very true in this game. Additionally, there are times when you have to choose between being able to be offensive and having to maneuver your ship to be defensive, rolling away from the source of fire, trying to get as much protection between the key systems and the source of fire as possible, which would otherwise make it very difficult for you to actually be offensive. And you can only be defensive for so long before you're dead because they've eaten through your shields and your hull, etc., etc. So having turrets in place that can fire on the bad guys means that you can kind of focus on strategy and maneuvering and all that other stuff. And if you have an opportunity to bring the main guns online and manually fire them, that's great. But if you find yourself outnumbered and you need to maneuver to survive, you're not basically just waiting to die, which quite often ends up being the case. So that's why the turrets, and also it sounds like something fun to mess around with. To each their own. Everyone's going to have their own ideas on that. Now, one of the things that I discovered, we talked in a previous episode about the cost of getting the recipe to make gray hull blocks was basically 5,000 gray hull blocks. The cost to get the recipe for gray hull wedges is 5,000 gray hull wedges. 5,000 gray hull blocks is really not that bad. We got 12,000 gray hull blocks out of 2 of the landing bays on the space station that we salvaged. I haven't found anywhere yet where you can salvage gray hull wedges. Now, I know you can buy them at space stations like the one you can see in the back there. I don't know if pirate ships have any on them that you could salvage. You destroy a pirate ship, you can salvage it, and then you get some gray hull wedges, maybe. I don't know. I just know that for a single player game, really, really expensive. Not easy to get any significant quantity of them. So I may spawn some in. I haven't decided yet. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how the finished product looks without them. You can see I put some on the bridge, obviously, but as far as the rest of the hull goes, I think it might be a little bit too big. We'll see. We'll see. It's one of those things. So we've talked about the weapons. We've talked about the aesthetics to some extent. Shields are obviously very important. There will be plenty of room inside the hull of the ship to put the shields, the generators, the power tanks, whatever else we might want to have on board and keep them relatively well protected. In fact, I can't even conceive of ever legitimately coming up with enough shields, generators, and tanks to fill the hull of this vessel from one end to the other so that there were no empty blocks anywhere. That would be just friggin' ludicrous. You'll get an idea of that once we get this profile done for this part of the ship. It's going to be a big ship. Not the biggest, but it'll be definitely pretty big. And it's a lot of fun building, really, is what it amounts to at this point. Putting the systems in is going to be a relatively minor task compared to actually building the ship itself. And with that in mind, you don't need to listen to me blabber about it anymore. We're just building now. You've got the overview. In the next episode, you'll get a much better kind of look at how the ship is going to shape up in its final form. And then I think by the third sort of part of this mini-series, if we call it that, we should be out hunting for pirates with a fully armed and operational battle cruiser. So if you want to be notified when I add the next episode, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on the Twitters at Enigmius1. You'll get a tweet when I add a new video. Please leave your comments and feedback below the video. I would appreciate that. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.